Good afternoon. This is Tuesday, December 4th, 2018. I'm Commissioner Bud Blake, Chair of the Board this year, and we are going to resume the budget for public hearing schedule as was noted yesterday on 3 December when we heard from the elected officials and department representatives. So we'll start today by going through the agenda today, which is involving transportation, environment, and land use. And so with that, we have the community planning and economic development and public works. Before we go any further, though, I'll turn it over to Robin. Robin Campbell is the budget officer, and let her give a little bit of background, and then we'll ask if there's any testimony from the public to come forward to the podium, and then if any one of the department representatives or electeds would like to come to the podium to speak in addition to that. Robin?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner. We have the presentation up, and
Are you mic'd up?
now it's not. How do you? But it's not on the screen. Yeah. We had it up, and then it went blank, and
right.
Now it's
This
taking
is
a
life's
moment
little
to come up.
curveballs.
So I do apologize. Because, no, is it this little button?
Is any of our AV stuff in the budget?
Not enough.
Yeah.
Enough of it to make it easy. Can't even see what that is. So,
I can hear you now.
yeah, Denise has gone to get Whitney, and we can, here we go.
Oh, you're talking about the actual
Yeah.
PowerPoint.
Yeah, it's just not on the screen. So the overview, we start with a very high-level overview, the same one as yesterday, so I'm just going to go through it very quickly for anyone who may be watching today. Thank
There we
you.
go.
There we go. So, again, very high-level overview. Here is your total fund operating revenue. It is a little bit less overall than our projected expenditures. As we talked about at the revenue hearing and at the public hearing yesterday, property taxes are our single largest source, even though we get a very small portion of every dollar. Only 9.5 cents out of every property tax dollar comes to the county's general fund. We have a small amount that goes into a few other funds, but the vast majority goes to the state and local jurisdictions. Overall, your proposed operating expenditures are just over $300 million this year. And your capital proposed revenue is $28 million in 2019 and $263 million in 2020. As we talked about yesterday, the 2020 is so much higher because we anticipate the bond revenue coming in for the courthouse. Now, you had asked yesterday how much of the revenue in the second year is for the courthouse. That's $255 million is anticipated for bond proceed, leaving about $8 million for just regular projects. And you'll see that that amount is in the other financing column. In 2019, about 16 of that 28 million is for the jail expansion, because we'll have to issue a bond for that, and then we'll pay that back out of REIT funding, which we already have available in the fund. But that's what that capital revenue is from. Proposed capital expenditures, a little over 31 million in the first year, and 49 million gets us going with the courthouse in the second year. Questions? Nope, no questions yet. Good. General fund revenue is $97 million in year one, a little over $100 million in year two. Again, the vast majority of that is taxes. Revenue is less than expenditures. In part, and here's the breakdown of the sectors that the expenditures go to. Vast majority out of the general fund is law and justice. Here's budgeted versus actual expenditures over the years. So what I was starting to say, in part, the budgeted expenditures are more than the revenue, but we always spend less than we budget, 3 to 5% less. So you see how that plays out over time. However, revenue is not always more than our expenditures. And at this time, we do anticipate spending down our fund balance. So that is part of the plan to be able to continue services, because revenue does not keep up with the growth in the cost of doing business. So that's just a very fast run through because we've already looked at all those slides before. This afternoon are the public hearings, as you noted, Commissioner Blake. I'll introduce each office and department. I'll turn it back to you to invite people to comment. If the public has questions, we have the department staff here to provide answers on the spot. And once all of the questions for that particular department are finished, then we'll just go right on to the next one. And I anticipate this hearing going pretty quick. We will absolutely not be here until 3 o'clock this afternoon, unless something goes very unexpectedly. Unless you have any questions about the overview? Nope. All right, we will launch straight into transportation, environment, and land use sector.
All righty, let's do it.
So the first department is community planning and economic development. And that department, we have Director Josh Cummings with us this afternoon. Thank you for being here. In land use, or CPED as we call it, their core book of business is land use regulations, development and construction permits, compliance with federal permits for stormwater standards. They have the WSU extension services in CPED, and they also have the county fair and the fairgrounds. So that's at a very high level, because every one of our departments does so much more than I'm going to touch on in these hearings. But at a high level, that's what CPED provides. In the budget, the highlights for CPED are the authorization of a purchase of web-based customer permit system. This will allow our developers to go online and submit their permits and streamline the process. There's expansion for the 4-H program for youth. There's a position added for gopher, prairie, and oak reviews. And the stormwater, utilities, and capital operations are going to transfer to public works. So if people were to compare the budget to last year, they'll see it goes down, and that's because of that transfer. In the budget, the general fund is about $2.5 million per year. Of that amount, $500,000 is WSU, and $2 million is long-range planning. The restricted funds in CPED are the biggest one, of course, land use and permitting fund. Then there is funding remaining in CPED for the regulation part, if you will, for storm and surface water. And then the fair and fairgrounds fund is in CPED. So if you don't have any questions, yes?
Can you remind me why there's 3 fewer in 2020?
3
employees.
Fewer employees. That's because employees in planning have end dates that are tied to grants.
Okay.
Our long-range planning is funded mainly through state and federal grants. We tie positions to those grants. When the grant ends, the position ends. We do extend them from year to year, but that is the main reason that that number
Okay.
goes down.
Thank you.
Yep. All right, back to you.
Anything from you? No?
Nope.
Okay, at this juncture, we open it up to the public to be able to come to the podium to be able to testify or voice how they feel about the particular budget. In this case, this is CPED, Community Planning and Economic Development. There's a sign-in sheet in the back there. Did anybody sign in by chance? No one signed in so far? And I'll just look out to the audience there and see if anybody from the public would like to raise their hand and show me they'd like to come to the podium. And by show of hand, I don't see anybody. So we'll just go on to the next portion of it. And is there a comment or two you'd like to make about the budget? Or it's up to you, totally up to you, yep.
Joshua Cummings, Director of Community Planning and Economic Development, otherwise known as CPED. The only comment I'd like to say is thank you for the continued support to serve the citizens of Thurston County. We appreciate that opportunity.
You bet. Any comments?
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you and your team.
Thank you.
You bet.
Thank you, John.
All right, Robin, and we have next is...
Okay, moving right along, we have Public Works. Director Jennifer Walker, I don't believe, oh, yes, here she is. Thank you very much, Jennifer. She's here with quite a few members of her team.
There we go, all of them here. all-
Yep, prepared to answer any questions you may have. So the main book of business of Public Works is roads and transportation, solid waste, noxious weeds, lake management districts, utilities, parks, and trails. So a really big job to keep the county moving. So the highlights of the budget changes for Public Works are additional storm, water, utility, and capital operations. And again, they come out of CPED and go into Public Works for better alignment of organizational operations. We've added right-of-way, civil engineer, and fiscal positions to Public Works. You funded studies for Independence Road, Martin Way, and Grand Mound. And the budget for Public Works includes a capital budget of $21.7 million in 2019 and $19.7 million in 2020. And those are construction projects, again, for transportation, solid waste, utilities, parks, and stormwater projects. There is no general fund in Public Works. All of the restricted funds, there are 24 funds that Public Works manages, possibly more than any other office or department other than the treasurer and the Board of County Commissioners. There are 2 road funds, one for maintenance and operations and one for construction. You have the Noxious Weeds Fund, 2 Lake Management District funds, 2 transportation, or 2 funds for impact fees, one for transportation impact fees, one's for park impact fees. There are 3 solid waste funds, a maintenance and operation, a reserve fund, and a reserve for post-closure that can only be used in support of the closed landfill. There are 2 storm and surface water funds, one for utilities and one for capital projects. And then you have 11 small utility funds for water and sewer, and those are for Tamashan, Grand Mound, Boston Harbor, and I think Beverly Beach. And then there is the Transportation Benefit District Fund. And I'll talk for just a moment about that fund because that would be a new fund, and the Board of County Commissioners also may convene as the Transportation Benefit District. And as the TBD, you have not yet taken action on revenue for the district. So there is at this time, no revenue coming into the county And that's a decision that's pending, if you will. We did assume revenue into this budget of $200,000 in 2019 and just under $1.2 million in 2020. Those would support expenditures for the wide road paint lines, for traffic calming, pavement overlay program, and the Mullen Road Southeast overheight vehicle warning system, as well as support a small amount of administrative costs. What I'm suggesting to you, since you've not taken action as the TBD, is that we leave these items in the budget with a proviso that these projects not go forward unless the TBD should take action to generate revenue at a future date. That gives you the most flexibility as we go through the coming year without overtaxing this budget. So that's what I would recommend to you. So with that, I would ask if you have any questions
We do have
about
a
Public
comment and
Works.
question.
Have any other counties in the state of Washington used the TBD for a funding source at this point in time?
I am not aware of any other counties. Nope, the staff are saying no. Other cities have implemented TBDs.
Thank you.
Well, there are counties who have formed TBDs.
TBD,
That
yes.
is thank you.
But they're not, they have enacted on a financial strategy to fund the TBDs.
Thank you.
And so since the TBD does not have a funding stream, those identified projects will not get worked on. Are those, I'm presuming, then the lowest priority type projects?
I would suggest that you ask that question of your Public Works Director.
Okay, then.
So,
Jennifer, we have.
The
Wait for
pleasure of
someone
the
to
board.
take the baton.
Take the podium.
Yeah, they're just deciding. Hello, Scott.
Good afternoon, Scott Lindblom, County Engineer of Public Works. So in answer to your question, the projects that were identified as funding for or receiving funding from the TBD, those would not get done. And are they the lowest priority projects? Yes, in the sense that without that funding, we wouldn't be doing those otherwise. At this point, we have an overlay program. It's not funded at this point. The TBD funding would certainly help provide a funding source for that.
Got it. Okay, I just was presuming, but didn't want to presume that those weren't the top priority.
Correct.
Got it, thank you.
Anything else?
No.
Anything else, Robin?
Nope, back to you.
All right, at this point, look out the audience and see if there's anybody from the general public, by a show of hand, would like to come to the podium and speak. And nobody on the sign-in sheets over this one also? No? No? Okay. So Jennifer or anybody, did you want to make a comment? It's strictly voluntary as far as the budget process so far and for Public Works.
Good afternoon, Jennifer Walker, Public Works Director. A couple of items. First, I want to thank the Commission for your consideration for the budget that we've presented to you. As Robin mentioned, we do have quite a bit of funds, and so the folks that are sitting behind me here from Public Works did a lot of work in preparing for this, and their staff did as well. So I thank them for their efforts. Thank you. With respect to the priority projects that Scott talked about, he's correct in terms of they are not our number one or two priority, but they did rank. They are on our priority list, and so they have been identified as projects that do need to get done. And as we've talked about during the TBD meetings, we do have some funding issues out into the future. So,
Okay. Any comments or questions?
Nope, thank you very much.
No,
Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer, very much for what you do.
Thank you for the Public Works. All righty, so that takes us to is that environment now?
That is all for this afternoon.
Okay.
Again, I'd like to thank the directors and the staff for coming today, prepared to answer any questions that citizens may have. For anyone watching, we are accepting comments. Send us email, call us, contact us in any way. You know,
anything,
we'd love to hear
Drone,
from
we
people
take it.
about this budget. So That's all I have for you, and we would, I recommend that you recess until 3:30.
Sure. Romero, did you have any comments? No, did you, final comments?
No, no, sir.
Okay, at this point, we're going to recess, and we'll be back at 3:30 with the budget amendment number 7. We are recessed.